Oh, yes. Yes. We are eating tonight. We are eating very well.
When you're abandoned on a deserted island, how should you survive? Over 48 hours, De Zhuang will show you how to handcraft hunting weapons with no tools at all and enjoy a seafood feast. On a deserted island, fire, water, and food are essentials. No point making a fire before you've got food. So De Zhuang's first move is to find something to eat. When the tide recedes, there's shellfish all over the rocks, but most are just empty shells. If you spot live ones, a big white clam is enough for a meal. Thumb-sized nail snails, palm-filling crab claws. These signs show this deserted island is rich in resources. De Zhuang finds a giant clam the size of a soccer ball. If he were starving, he might toss a giant clam on the coals to taste it. After a search, he finally discovers 2 shellfish bigger than his fists, and they look alive. Does anyone know what species of shellfish this is? Or maybe, on an uninhabited island, clams can grow bigger than a fist. As he's expecting a feast, De Zhuang smacks the shells against a plank of wood, and they turn out to be full of mud inside. What a pity. These shellfish all seem to have died naturally. Without enemies in the food chain, they've grown this big. De Zhuang keeps combing the muddy flats for food. Each step sinks into foul muck, but he keeps combing for shellfish. Survival rewards those who refuse to quit. Before long, De Zhuang spots a fist-sized shellfish. When he knocks it against the wood, there's no mud coming out. He figures this one's alive, so De Zhuang pries it open with his knife. And sure enough, there's a piece of fresh meat inside. He plans to collect a few more to roast and eat.
The best way to go about these is actually, we'll try and get a couple and then put them straight on the fire, and then the heat of the fire will open them straight up, and then they'll be ready to eat.
Back on the beach, De Zhuang notices some tracks on the ground. From the tracks, he tells the crocodile lay resting under the tree. Flying the drone, De Zhuang finds a saltwater crocodile nearby. Now, if you encounter a crocodile, be very careful. In the past, you didn't need to be so worried, because indigenous people hunted crocodiles for food, and then many crocodiles were killed. So deep down, they had a fear and respect for humans. Crocs were wary and kept away from people. But from the late 1980s onward, crocodiles protected, and their population and body size grew. With time, they lost their fear of people. So if you run into one on a deserted island, you have to steer clear immediately. De Zhuang uses the drone to monitor. He spots a crocodile in the nearby shallows, roughly 2 meters long. De Zhuang spots a conch on a beach and picks it up. Shells are common on deserted islands. Locals use shells to hold drinking water. De Zhuang buries the conch in sand, opening facing up. When it rains, the upward opening collects rainwater. Once the tide recedes, De Zhuang combs the shoreline, snacking on raw oysters clinging to the rocks. He pries the shells open with his knife and eats a snack. Then De Zhuang picks up a stray tree branch. With just a bit of shaping with the knife, he can turn it into a lethal spear. Spear ready, De Zhuang searches the tidal flats. After the tide recedes, crabs hide under driftwood. He probes carefully with the spear, and soon he spots a stingray in the shallows. De Zhuang closes, spear ready. The stingray sleeps in the shallows. In sleep, it takes a hard jab from De Zhuang. That heavy strike must have really hurt the stingray. Luckily, this whole tidal flat is shallow, so it has nowhere to escape. De Zhuang jabs at it. The stingray doesn't want to be his lunch. It still can't get away from his spear. This stingray is fated to end up as De Zhuang's grilled dinner. Once you spear a stingray, handle its venomous tail barb first. You just need to use a small knife to gently slice it off. The stingray spine has some venom, but what really hurts are the barbs on it. If it pierces you, yanking the spine out feels like ripping your flesh. Suddenly, the rain comes down. But for a castaway, that's actually great news. Rain means you can gather plenty of fresh drinking water. De Zhuang gulps rainwater in the downpour, and when the storm eases, the conch he placed has gathered enough fresh water. It's not much, but it's enough to wet his throat. If you're stuck on a deserted island and you can't get rainwater or seafood, you can copy some African indigenous practices. Dig up edible roots and tubers, or grind the roots into a powder and cook them. De Zhuang starts randomly digging in the ground with a stick, hoping to find some root crops like yam or sweet potato. African indigenous once survived by digging soil and eating what they found. After digging for a while, De Zhuang turns up 2 black round lumps. These tubers, which look like potatoes, can provide some carbohydrates. But to be safe, it's best to cook them before eating. In fact, besides digging up roots and tubers for carbs, there are other ways to get food. There are many kinds of trees on a deserted island. You can often find fallen fruit beneath them. Those seemingly rotten pits on ground have edible cores you can treat like nuts, bend down and scoop a handful. But if you eat many nuts, your teeth turn black. Many African indigenous mouths look stained with blood. In fact, this is because they often chew a nut called betel nut. If stuck on a deserted island and encounter locals grinning bright red mouths, we need not be scared, because they eat nuts, not people. Now, we have food. We need to make fire. The Zhuang makes fire by rubbing wood. He chops a straight branch as a drill stick, then picks a dry plank for the fireboard, bores a hole, and carves a small notch. As the drill stick whirls, it grinds embers, and once they're enough, blow them into flame. Before you start drilling for fire, you should first get a bundle of dry tinder ready. When you have an ember, tuck it into the tinder bundle and blow gently. People have made fire by drilling wood for thousands of years, and many African indigenous groups still use this method today. It's very hard on the hands, and the failure rate is high.
There we go, getting some smoke. We're close. There we go, that smoke is staying there now. See that little bit of smoke? Come on, come on. There we go.
For Zhuang, with 10 years of island survival experience, making fire is as easy as having hands. With fire, he can cook tonight's dinner. The main ingredient is a 7-gene stingray, which will provide plenty of meat and protein. Besides the stingray, there are also 2 fist-sized shellfish, plus some root tubers dug from underground. On a deserted island, you don't have cookware, so you roast everything on the coals. The Zhuang sets everything on the coals and just has to wait about half an hour for dinner, as the fish slowly cooks. He should tell everyone a true Castaway story from 1858. At that time, a 14-year-old French boy was working as a cabin boy on a ship called the St. Paul. The ship hit a reef and went down on the way, and the survivors got away in lifeboats. After roughly 12 days adrift, they finally made land near Australia's Cape York Peninsula. By then, Peltier was injured and severely dehydrated. He was half dead, and the others saw him as dead weight, pinning bad luck on this cabin boy. So they pretended he could stay ashore to wait for fresh water, then quietly sailed away, abandoning this 14-year-old boy alone on the beach to die. Right as Peltier was about to black out, a few Australian Aboriginal people discovered him. They gave him water, treated his wounds with herbs, and brought him home to their tribe. The boy learned their language, their hunting methods, and their way of life, and passed their male initiation rite, fully accepted as a tribe member. He lived like this in the Aboriginal community for a full 17 years. Until 1875, he was discovered by Europeans and taken to France. But for him, it was not a rescue, as he had lived with the Aboriginal tribe for 17 years. A roasted tuber kicks off the meal. Its skin is burnt black. It doesn't affect the flesh inside. It's rich in starch and tastes a bit like potato. Next up is the big shellfish. They don't actually have much meat. They're clam-like, and with enough, you'd be full. The star of the meal is this grilled stingray. The Zhuang gently lifts it off the fire. Though the outside is charred and ashy, just peel off the skin and you'll see the tender, white meat inside.
Yeah, that's nice. Yum, yum. Got like a rich taste, like a rich seafoody scallop type of setup.
Stingray meat is more fibrous, but the flavor is rich and briny. Once the tide recedes on a deserted island, stingrays appear in the shallow flats. If you're stuck on a deserted island and snag a stingray, just grill it like the Zhuang, then peel off the skin. The meat inside is very soft. Satisfied, the Zhuang found a dry spot in the jungle to lie down, and after a quick clear up, he lay down to rest. At dawn, the Zhuang went into the seaside mangroves to forage, planning to hunt down a big mud crab. Mangroves are where mud crabs hole up. On the ground, the Zhuang noticed wild boar tracks. Bag a wild boar, and surviving here for a month would be a breeze. Wild boar traces were all over the forest floor, enough to show how much damage they cause. The Zhuang bent down and picked up a half-charred shell. From its look, he recognized it as a spider conch. This charred spider conch shell was likely roasted and eaten by the island's original inhabitants long ago. Mangrove mud crabs, or green crabs, inhabit muddy tidal flats. Before long, the Zhuang spotted a big mud crab resting right beside a log. He slowly approached from behind and could clearly see that this crab was huge. Sensing danger, the crab shot under the log. The Zhuang saw a large hole beneath it. Missing out on a crab that size was a real shame. He kept searching the area because the holes were probably crab dens. The Zhuang put his hand in and felt around, and soon he found another big mud crab. He quietly circled around from behind, but before he got near, the crab darted into its hole. If it were me, I'd dig down as far as it takes to haul that crab out. This dark mud is packed with crabs. You can grab a fat claw with one reach. All for a real crab feast. DeJuan really went for it and shoved his hand in, trying to drag the crab out. Super risky. So he fed the knife into the hole instead. Once the crab bit down on the blade, he could just haul it out.
Oh. Oh. Yes. Oh. Oh, yes. Yes. We are eating tonight. We are eating very well.
DeJuan landed a big mud crab. It takes more than 10 years of hunting experience. You'd get your hand crushed by this crab. Back on the beach, he started a fire to cook dinner. While making charcoal, DeJuan decided to craft a primitive spear. He shaved off the bark with his knife, and as soon as the coals were hot, he tossed the crab on to roast. Just look at the size of this crab. DeJuan has caught plenty of crabs in his island survival trips, but it's rare to get one this big. All he has to do is toss it straight into the fire to roast. Roasting the crab takes some time, so DeJuan used the coals to work on the spear. You can shape the wood as it bakes, and once it dries over the flames, it turns much harder. Charring wood is key to making a primitive spear. When the crab shell turns red, that means it's fully cooked. But in just that short time, the spear stayed in the fire too long, and all his work on it was wasted.
No! Just gonna say it's starting to look a little straighter. I've just bloody got a bit impatient, too much force.
It didn't affect his mood for enjoying crab dinner though. The best part of a crab is the big claws. Male crabs have the biggest claws. Crack them open and you get sweet, tender meat. Take one bite, and being stranded on a deserted island for 100 years would feel worth it.
Yum. It takes my mind off the spear failure.
On the third day, DeJuan explored a new area of the island. Before setting out, he grabbed a couple coconuts for breakfast. This beach is lined with coconut trees, and the coconuts are all within arm's reach. With no fresh water around, you can still get by for a while living off coconuts. Coconut water keeps you hydrated, and the meat gives you carbs. The tide was out, and the bare rocks might be hiding stranded sea life. DeJuan flips over a rock and finds an eel hiding underneath. When the tide recedes, many eels move close to shore to feed, but DeJuan doesn't like eating eel. Eels are long and skinny, with one spine and little flesh, so DeJuan decides to pass on them. These flat, paper-thin shore fish have barely any meat. DeJuan heads to the far side of the island. Inland, coconut trees abound, with more coconuts than he can eat. Apart from the coconuts, there are many wild fruit trees with unripe fruit. When the fruits are ripe, the flesh is plump and they smell like rotten cheese. But they're edible, and the young leaves can be eaten. DeJuan cuts one of the fruits open. It looks very juicy, but the taste is pretty bad, with a slight bitterness to it.
So you can sort of just cut them into slices like that, and then just eat the whole thing. Block your nose and eat the whole thing. They're bitter, pretty disgusting, stink, but are edible.
Besides these cheese-smelling wild fruits, DeJuan finds a coastal nut tree. The ground is covered with dried sea almonds, and picking them up gives him a boost of nutrition. They're also very easy to eat. Just roast them briefly over the coals. The weather isn't great today. DeJuan notices a huge bank of dark clouds ahead. A heavy downpour is coming. But his mind isn't on rainwater collection. It's making a spear for hunting. There are many sprouting coconuts on this beach. Stuck on a deserted island, you could pot some to take home. On the beach, DeJuan also scoops up useful trash. He finds a prime feng shui spot surrounded by vegetation, forming a natural windbreak. The shoreline is lined with cheese fruit trees, and their leaves are eaten as greens and have medicinal uses. When DeJuan and his girlfriend were stranded on an island for a month, she never had any issues. He picked leaves every day and made a salad for her, and never had to take responsibility after. Then DeJuan grabbed bamboo to make a fishing spear. It's easy to make. Split one end and sharpen the tips to keep the bamboo from splitting apart. DeJuan tightly bound the base with plastic string. Once it was all wrapped up, he could get started on shaping the spear. Before long, DeJuan had a simple fishing spear ready.
The bamboo was a little bit rotten, so it's certainly not the best spear you're ever going to see. But I think it's going to do the job. A couple of sharp prongs on there, that'll be enough for us to nail like a land crab or something in one of those shallow rock pools. Let's go for a bit of a walk, see what we can get.
With the sharp spear in hand, DeJuan couldn't wait to try some hunting, so he went back to yesterday's tidal flats, looking for a crab to use as a target. The burrows beneath the coconut trees belonged to land crabs, and DeJuan spotted one. But he thought it was too small and decided to spare its life. Only big crabs make the hunt exciting. There were loads of land crabs on the beach. So De Zhuang picked a larger one to prove the spear worked. These land crabs have big claws. Suddenly, he got a craving for crab. The primitive spear performed beautifully in this hunt. The land crab wasn't small, but it was still far from enough to fill him. So he turned back to the rocks to hunt more. As the tide dropped, the rocks emerged, and the seawater was clear. Any movement was visible.
There he is.
On the reef, De Zhuang found a sea cucumber, a delicacy. But to him, that slimy, squishy stuff just isn't tasty. Fish swarmed the shallows, but even with a spear, they were tough to catch. The tide was dropping fast, making it the perfect time to forage the shore. Every rock he flipped had fish under it, but they darted away. Skewering them was no cakewalk, but you don't quit on life just because it gets tough. De Zhuang honed the spear prongs again, hoping they'd matter when it counted, then went back to flipping rocks for sea fish. He saw a blacktail bream in the shallows, but kept missing it over and over. Every time he got close, it bolted instantly. De Zhuang can be pretty stubborn. He locked onto one fish, ignoring the black sea cucumbers on the beach that looked like dog poop. A pot of sea cucumber soup could have filled him up. He spotted eaglebeak fish. They were bigger, and compared to the small fish, actually easier to hunt.
Get them in the rocks there. We're gonna get one of these guys. They're in the shallows now. Oh, that was a bad throw. I've got to corner them in the shallows here. Come on, come on, come on. Where'd they go?
To get himself a fish to eat, De Zhuang really went all in, chasing fish barehanded in the sea. Just from that, you know how hard it was. In no time, all the fish were gone. He inched his spear into the cracks. Even when fish were hiding inside, he still couldn't stab one before it darted off. De Zhuang just kept at it. He dogged those eaglebeak fish, tailing them wherever they swam. De Zhuang could miss repeatedly, but the fish only needed one slip-up and they were done. He kept refining the spear tip, but luck wasn't on his side. He failed over and over. Bit by bit, he picked up some tricks and finally cornered a fish in a hole beneath a reef rock. The rock was too heavy to move, so he had to reach into the hole and drag the fish out by hand.
There we go. A beautiful little parrotfish. Oh, wow. Sorry, mate. Might not be the biggest fish ever, guys, but that is going to be a delicious feed.
In the end, De Zhuang did manage to catch an eaglebeak fish. It wasn't very big, but it was won through his own effort. The blood in the water soon drew in a blacktip reef shark. This species isn't all that deadly, just insanely greedy. De Zhuang gripped his spear and locked eyes with the shark, determined to defend the hard-won dinner to the death. Back on the beach, Da Zhuang starts a fire to cook dinner. He gathers a dry wooden board and a straight branch. Seeing those two tools, I can tell right away he's going to make fire by friction. The coconut husk fibers on the ground will serve as tinder, so he gets everything ready before he starts. Same old method, same old routine.
Oh, come on. There's a tiny bit of smoke. Is there a tiny bit of smoke there? Oh, there's a tiny bit of smoke there. Where did he go? Where did he? Come on.
Though Da Zhuang has caught some fish, the materials are still a bit damp. His first attempt at making a fire fails, so he tries again. A curl of smoke rises from an ember in a coconut husk, and Da Zhuang blows. As the smoke thickens, he finally succeeds in getting a flame. On a deserted island, having fire is like having everything. A campfire is more than a way to cook meals. It keeps you warm and fends off mosquitoes. Da Zhuang grabs another coconut. He tears off the fibers, then taps all the way around the shell with his knife so he can open it easily. What he's really after is the carb-rich coconut meat inside, and he has to be extra careful prying it out. Otherwise, he'll pay for it, as he just did. After a long day on the move, right now all he wants is to savor the coconut meat and refill his energy. Every seafood meal on this island costs effort. After the coconut meat, Da Zhuang drinks coconut water to rehydrate. In this heat, he is losing water. He has to top up with coconut water or fresh water. Beyond quenching thirst, coconut water can be used to stew fish. Da Zhuang stuffs the catch into a coconut, then sets it over the fire to roast, along with 2 land crabs caught today. Tonight's dinner looks plentiful, but every bite comes from a whole day of hard work. Living on a deserted island with 1 meal a day, does it seem easy? Beneath the coals, the seafood gives off an aroma. After half an hour, Da Zhuang pulls roasted fish and crabs from the coals. It may not seem a lavish spread, but out here this dinner is extraordinary. Da Zhuang cuts open the charred fish skin. The white meat looks tempting, but what he's craving are those crabs.
With one of these crab claws. Oh, they're hot. good meat in these crab claws. Wow. There's that parrotfish. Beautiful and tender. That's really nice, really, really nice.
The island never gives food for free. Das Wong spent the day running around, stumbling on, to finally earn this hard-won dinner. Real island survival isn't about getting lucky and feasting on seafood. It's about not quitting on the next try, no matter how many times you've failed.